Okay, so we need to have a chat. I decided to upgrade to the Steam Deck OLED, and it's been an interesting upgrade journey. I want to share with you just real quick my thoughts on the Steam Deck OLED, especially compared to the LCD. Now, one of the first things that I want to get out of the way is that on this channel, you're never going to hear me say that the LCD is trash, that the LCD is not worth buying, because there are many instances where it makes a little bit more sense to get the LCD, and I'm going to explain why. And I'm also going to explain why the Steam Deck OLED is objectively better. It is a much better handheld, but it might not be the handheld that everyone should pick up, especially if you're considering a Steam Deck, because while it is better, there's a little bit of nuance and caveats to that I want to get into real quick. Okay, so just jumping straight into it. Now, the LCD is a fantastic device, and I really want to stress that you don't need to get the OLED. You'll hear a lot of other people saying that, oh, the OLED is so much better, while it is, and way better that you don't even need to consider getting an LCD, that you're wasting your money getting an LCD. And I'm gonna be one of the first people that at least I've seen just tell you straight up that while the LCD is very good, it is dated in the sense of just the screen technology and the battery life expectancy compared to a lot of the other newer handhelds that are out there, but it is not so much worse that it is not worth your money, especially when it goes on sale. We've seen Steam and Valve put together the Steam Deck on sale for around $320 twice in the last 6 months, maybe even more than that, and it's been fantastic. At $320, you are hard pressed to find a nicer new device that you can pick up that is so turnkey and ready to go. Now, of course, you could get a used ROG Ally and install SteamOS, but from a pure out-of-box turnkey experience, again, you're hard-pressed to find something better than the $320 Steam Deck. And that's another thing that I will throw out there, that while the cost of technology and all of these components that go together to make these handhelds have gone up, Steam has been adamant about not raising their prices on either the LCD or the OLED. And in fact, they have lowered the price on the LCD several times in this last year. The lowest that we've seen is $320 brand new. And of course, there were some other things that you can do, like taking advantage of PayPal cashback and basically get an extra 20% off after that. And so that is an absolute insane bargain. And so when you take into account all of these factors and you compare the LCD cost at a much lower cost compared to the Steam Deck entry-level price being $550, well, it is a pretty stark difference. Now, the other thing to consider too is that the OLED does come with a lot of really nice things, but if you primarily play your handhelds docked, or if you just find yourself wanting to play docked more often than you might think, then the OLED's benefits aren't really going to be that much more worth it, because you're really sacrificing a lot of the benefits if you're just going to be playing docked anyways. What I mean by that is that the screen with the OLED is objectively nicer when you're playing handheld, but when you're playing docked, it's really all just dependent on the screen of the actual monitor that you're using. So if you are using an LCD versus an OLED docked, you're going to have identically the same experience between the two handhelds. Also, another big thing is the battery life, but again, that is going to be completely irrelevant if you are playing docked, because, well, it's going to be charging while it's docked anyway, so it really doesn't matter. Now, the other thing is the lightweight aspect of the OLED. Now, the OLED, for me, I've personally found a pretty significant difference, even though it's about 5% of a difference, technically speaking. But again, that is another area where you're just going to be sacrificing the benefit of the OLED if you're going to be playing docked, because again, docked, you're not going to be holding it in your hand. So keep all of these things into account, especially the Wi-Fi 6. While the Wi-Fi 6 is objectively better on the OLED, for me, Wi-Fi 5 has not been an issue on the LCD. Plus, if you're playing docked and you are able to use an Ethernet connection, again, the Wi-Fi 6 addition or upgrade is just going to be completely irrelevant when you're playing docked. And the reason I keep mentioning docked playing is that there's a lot more people that play docked than you might think. Now, before I get into some of the reasons why the OLED is way better than the LCD and some of the really nice creature comforts, I do want to give a quick second to talk about the sponsor of today's video. That's going to be Deck Talk. So Deck Talk reached out to me and asked if I would be interested in talking about their foldable floor lamp, and you might have seen this in the background of some of the shots throughout this video while I was playing with the Steam Deck. And the only reason I agreed to talk about their product in this video is because this lamp allows me to get a really cool vibe, whether I'm wanting to have a really nice RGB light setup with different colors going on because there are different segments on here, or just having a simple backlight against my TV. But I mean, if I'm being completely honest, I just wanted something that looked cool in the background. Now, what's really cool is that this works really well in gaming rooms like mine, but it also works in a living living room. So you don't necessarily need to have this be a really gamery-esque light. You're able to really just change the colors however you want. It does connect to Amazon and Google services as well, so that way you can use voice commands, and it really helps to set the mood when I'm playing something like a horror game like Dead Space, or I'm playing something fun and bright. One other thing I should also mention is that it is a floor lamp, but it's also something you can mount to the wall and you can bend in any shape that you want. So if you are at all interested in picking up this lamp, then I will have an affiliate link down below. But anyways, let's get back to the video to talk about the OLED versus the LCD and why the OLED is a really nice incremental upgrade, but there's so many incremental upgrades that make a massive quality of life difference. Now, getting all of that out of the way, if you are not playing docked, then the handheld experience is going to be objectively better on the OLED. It is not so much better that I would recommend you not get the LCD because it's just going to be a waste of your time and money. But if you already have the LCD, it is an incremental upgrade in terms of the overall life betterment experience, but it's not so much better that I would recommend just dropping the LCD that you have to then upgrade to the OLED. Again, I want to be super crystal clear because I can already see some of the comments being written right now about the LCD saying, oh, I used to have the LCD when it originally came out, but I sold it and got the OLED and it's a life and day difference. And if you've had a night and day difference between the two models, then that's great. Congrats and more props to you. But it's for the general public, a lot of people aren't really going to notice the 5% weight difference. Some people don't really care that much about the OLED difference, while it is objectively nicer and the colors pop so much more. And it's a lot more of an immersive experience because you're not getting, you know, your blacks and your shadows illuminated by the backlit screen. With the OLED, you're actually having those pixels turn off. And so you're getting a lot more dynamic range. But for some people, they don't care about that. And the battery life is an objectively better experience. You are able to get an extra hour in many cases of gaming on the go. But like I've said in the past, gaming on the go isn't too big of an issue for me because there's not very many instances in my life where I'm playing for 2 to 3 hours away from any kind of charger. And if I am, then I carry a portable power bank with me. Portable battery life gaming is not too big of an issue for me as long as I can get about 2 hours of battery life. I really don't care if it's 3 hours or 10 hours. It doesn't make too big of a difference to me. But again, not everyone games like me. And so there are some of these really nice upgrades and things that make a much nicer quality of life. But I really want to stress to you that if you have the LCD, or if you're considering getting the LCD and the OLED is just so much out of your price range that you're gonna have to wait a really long time to be able to save up and get the OLED, the LCD is not that far off from the OLED. Now, here's where I'm going to tell you why the OLED is a fantastic experience, because as somebody that has been singing the praises of the LCD, as somebody that was brand new to PC gaming and Steam Decks, I've had an absolutely incredible time with my LCD, but I've had an even better time with the OLED, so much so that I'm really considering just selling my LCD because I don't really need to have 2 Steam Decks. The OLED is something that I decided to purchase to test out for the channel, to see, you know, just to basically have a sort of comparison video like this and potentially return it or just sell it secondhand if I really didn't feel like it was something that I wanted to keep long term. It's something that I wanted to test out for myself, actually, you know, put my money where my mouth is to see, is the LCD worth it over the OLED or vice versa? And I'm deciding to keep the OLED, but the OLED is just such a really good quality of life improvement. Again, not so much that you really need to feel like you're missing out on something drastic, but it's just a culmination of a lot of really nice upgrades, little upgrades, that make a really big improvement. The biggest improvement is obviously going to be the screen, and I've found a really awesome experience playing Dead Space. Dead Space is a fantastic game, at least for me, to really experience the really nice quality of the OLED, because when you're walking around shadowy corners or hallways with the lights turned off or whatever is the case, you really feel a lot more immersed, and in my case, I feel a bit more scared because I don't see what's going on in front of me. If there is a shadow and the pixels are turned off because this is an OLED, I objectively cannot see what's going on in front of me. Whereas with an LCD, you do have the, you know, the shadows being lit by the backlight, and so it's not as immersive of an experience as you would like. And so it's just a really nice, awesome experience when you're playing a horror game, but it's also really good when you're playing a game that has a lot of dynamic colors. You really feel the world around you. You really see things. Plus, that 0.4-inch screen size upgrade is a nice and welcome upgrade. It helps in the immersiveness feel, but it's not so much of a intrusive size upgrade that you now all of a sudden need to get a new case, or the grip that you might have previously used on the LCD won't fit on the OLED. So you don't have to worry about any of those things because all of these things do interchangeably work. The overall shell size of the OLED is identical to the LCD. So that's a really nice thing that they've actually squeezed out a little bit more space on the screen, but the overall fit and finish and size is the exact same as the LCD. Also, a really cool quality of life upgrade that I didn't expect to appreciate as much as I do is the buttons. The buttons just feel a lot more dialed in. I feel like when I'm pressing the AB face buttons, everything just feels a bit more premium and a bit more of a nicer experience than with the a little bit clickier and just sort of by the book experience that you would expect with the LCD. That's just something that I actually really like, because when I'm playing in bed next to my wife and she's sleeping, then me clicking on the buttons doesn't affect her too much. At least not as much as it did with the LCD. Not that she ever complained about it, but it's just one of those things that I'm like worried that I'm gonna wake up the person next to me. And so it is nice knowing that you're getting a little bit more of a quiet experience, and just the overall feel does feel a bit better. It is also worth mentioning that the size of the storage is gonna be a nice upgrade as well. So with the LCD, I had 256 gigabytes, and the OLED, I decided to go with the 512. So I'm literally getting twice the storage size, and that is a nice welcome quality of life improvement, because while I could just pop in a micro SD card in any handheld that I have, just having really nice SSD space that I'm able to put an extra game or two without having to spend the money on an SD card, even though they're not crazy expensive, but you get the point. It is nice having that upgrade. So that is something to consider as well with the price difference between the LCD and the OLED, is that you are getting double the storage space. So anyways, the LCD is still an objectively good handheld, and I want to be crystal clear about that. If you are just feeling like you're missing out on the OLED and you're just really looking for some confirmation bias that you have a good handheld, the LCD is fantastic. And honestly, if I decided not to get the OLED just to test out for the channel, then I would still be rocking my LCD more than I'm rocking like my Xbox Ally or my Switch 2 or any of my other handhelds that I have. So I want to be crystal clear that the LCD is fantastic. The OLED is better, but not so much better that you are missing out on a night and day difference. And anyone can, share their thoughts of the LCD versus the OLED down below. You were probably already doing that anyways, but the OLED is just every metric that the LCD was great with and fantastic with, the OLED just took to the next level. But for the price difference, and if you cannot afford it, and if you are just looking at the LCD on sale or different things like that, the OLED is fantastic. And if you have the money, definitely go for it. But if it's going to be a matter of waiting 6 months to a year to be able to save up the difference, because there are people that have to wait that long to come up with the difference, the LCD is going to be a fantastic experience. And I'm not going to gatekeep the overall Steam Deck experience by just saying that you're wasting your money getting the LCD versus the OLED, because for the average person that is completely new to PC gaming or the gaming handheld landscape, the Steam Deck is a really just no-brainer entryway into saving money with games with Steam and having a really high quality experience on the go. And I don't want to gatekeep that entry point experience by saying that you have to get the higher end version, because you don't have to. You're going to have a really good time with the LCD, but overall you're deciding between a great experience or better experience, but both are still awesome, and both experiences, you as the gamer are winning.